Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. My name's David Sidwick. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Dorset, and this is one of our regular Facebook Live updates. And we're really looking forward to basically interacting with you and answering as many of your questions as possible. So please keep them coming throughout the evening. I guess it's something which would be useful is actually to understand what I do. So the Police and Crime Commissioner's role has three main factors to it. One is I have a small amount of money, which I use for reducing reoffending, victim support, and crime prevention. The second role, if you like, is to make certain we have an efficient and effective police force. That is largely about making certain we have the resources, and that's about money. And then the third one is, to my mind, the core of the job. And why it's an elected position is I represent you, the people, and I hold Dorset Police to account to deliver on what you want from your police force. And that's through a police and crime plan. And that has a number of factors: to cut crime and reduce antisocial behavior, to make the police more visible, connected and engaged, to fight violence and high harm, fight rural crime, put victims and communities first, and make every penny count. So that's what we're trying to deliver. We're looking forward to, as I say, answering as many questions as possible this evening. And I'm going to hand over to Mark Callaghan, the Assistant Chief Constable of Dorset Police, who will introduce his team.
Thanks, Commissioner. Evening, everybody. Yes, my name is Mark Callaghan. I'm the Assistant Chief Constable for Dorset Police. My portfolio responsibility is local policing, so neighbourhood teams, response policing, the crime department, so your traditional CID and wider crime departments, and criminal justice, as well as strategic partnerships. What I'm going to do now is just ask Chief Superintendent Dixie to introduce herself, and then we'll go to Chief Inspector Jed Want. Before we start taking those questions, I'm keen this evening to get into answering as many questions as possible. So Heather, do you want to just do your intro?
Indeed. So yes, thank you, sir. Good evening, everybody. My name is Heather Dixie, and I am a Chief Superintendent, and I am the commander for the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area. So as Mr. Callaghan has sort of touched upon, I have responsibility for all the policing that happens within that geographical area. So whether that's local response policing, 999 calls, neighbourhood policing, through to serious investigations. I also chair the Community Safety Partnership, so I work very closely with our colleagues in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole local authority to have a very much of a focus around community safety. And I'll hand over to Jed now for County.
Thanks, Mum. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jed Want. I'm the Neighbourhood Policing Team Chief Inspector for Dorset County local policing area. For neighbourhood policing, some of the pillars that we focus on are engaging communities, targeted activity, problem solving, and partnership working.
Great. Thanks, Jed. Right, let's get into the questions now. I think that's the key thing for this evening, to answer as many as you can. So please do keep popping your questions in if we have the first one. So the first one from Matthew Smith. So I'm concerned about the gangs which facilitate drugs in Bournemouth and actively prey on the homeless and vulnerable for their operations. This has massively escalated in the last 18 months, and their crime remits are now pushing the boundaries to involve innocent bystanders. And on Monday, an individual reported to have suffered head injuries, and the early hours of Sunday morning, you witnessed firsthand the drug addict individual receiving multiple blows to his head. Heather, obviously that's for Bournemouth Town Centre. Do you want to answer that and just give us an overview of the activity that's ongoing?
Yeah, so very much aware of obviously drug-related activity within the Bournemouth Town Centre and in the wider area. It is very much a focus and a priority of ours to target drug-related activity and all the safeguarding issues that come with that to some of those vulnerable people that you've alluded to. So we've had many successes over the past year whereby we really try to focus and target our energies into the higher level drug dealers who facilitate and exploit people within our communities to deal those drugs on their behalf, and with that comes an element of violence. So we have had some successful interventions where we have taken out some of those drug lines, taken out some of those individuals who've committed crimes and exploited people. What I will say as well, it's very much part of our patrol function. So our neighbourhoods and local policing teams, and working with our covert teams as well. So officers in plain clothes. We do focus on that within our daily patrols. I'm not quite sure of those incidents you're referring to. Hopefully you have reported those. If you've witnessed that drug deal and witnessed that individual being assaulted, I'd like to hope that you've reported that into us so we have your details. So if you are a witness to an offence or a crime happening, we can therefore investigate. But we do very much take that seriously, and where vulnerable people in particular are being harmed, that is very much a priority of ours.
Thanks, Heather. Commissioner, is there anything that you want to add, any of your work that you're doing around this area?
Yes, there is actually. Just before I do that, though, Heather, can you just give a comment? There was a comment there about an escalation and an increase around the violence associated, etc.
Yeah.
What is the situation in Bournemouth at the moment?
So I'm not aware of that, and that's certainly not the report. We are not seeing a rise in violence. In fact, our violence overall in the town centre has actually reduced year on year. In particular, within our nighttime economy, we've seen a real reduction where actually some of our most vulnerable were being harmed within the nighttime economy. So homeless people, for example. We've seen a significant reduction in violence through that visible policing presence within the town centre. So that whilst that gentleman may refer to he feels there has been, our evidence and our data does not tell us that, nor do our homeless community and those that we speak to on a daily basis through our contacts within the Community Safety Partnership allude that that is actually rising, that we are not aware of.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll say two things briefly then, Mark, because you know this is something close to my heart and I could take up the whole time if necessary. Regarding the issue of drugs in our society in Dorset, you need three things. You need tough enforcement, which you just talked about, but you also need effective treatment and recovery to help those people who are addicted, and you need prevention. And all those three are being driven hard through something called the Combating Drugs Partnership, which I chair. And we are making inroads in all of those three areas. It's a constant issue and we will constantly deal with it. I think that's what I'm saying. We've had some successes, particularly across the Southwest, with things like Operation Scorpion, where the 5 PCCs and the 5 forces have come together. And that's actually lowered the threat of county lines across the Southwest. But there's more to do and we'll keep doing it.
Thanks, Commissioner. And in relation to, just whilst we've got the next question up, the incidents this weekend, I was working this weekend and I think I know which incident you're referring to. And we did respond, and some of those responses are response officers, and there's some named defenders on the back of those investigations, people known to each other. So I know we are proactively investigating those. I just ask at this point, and for everybody, that if you've got information, you've got intelligence, 101 online, the single online home, or Crime Stoppers, it's key that you fill any intelligence gaps we've got. But we're absolutely committed to making sure our streets are toxic to those who want to commit crime, and we're constantly targeting it. So the next question from Amy Stevenson is, why is it you don't seem to take online grooming as seriously as you should? Heather, do you want to answer this, or do you want me to answer it?
I could touch on it to say we very, very do take online grooming exceptionally seriously. It's probably one of the most highest harm crimes that can be committed within our communities. We have a dedicated team, sort of an online grooming team that very much focus on exactly that matter. Mr. Callaghan will probably be able to talk more around the data that goes behind that. But we are dedicated to that. We recognise nationally that it is rising in some areas, or the volume, which goes to demonstrate nationally our commitment to eradicating this harm as much as we possibly can. So, Mr. Callaghan, do you want to potentially touch on anything?
Yeah, I think you've covered a lot of it off, but I think just to give reassurance, we have got a dedicated team. We also do a lot of work through our Safer Schools teams with schools about educating children through youth offending, etc., about safety. Other aspects of work that we do is work closely with the National Crime Agency, our regional organised crime units. So actually, online offending is borderless. So often it's, it's people elsewhere in the world. And actually there's lots of proactive work. I can't go into the details here, but I can reassure you the demand of referrals to us is going up, which is actually something which we're putting more resource into our online investigation team, and we're consistently tackling those offenders, and of course those that are convicted, then potentially if they're convicted become sex offender on the registration scheme for sex offenders, and that's another area we work closely with other partners to make sure that we're managing those offenders accordingly. Next question, please. So Taff Hughes, why is there no working police station in the county of Dorchester? Commissioner, is that something you'd like to comment on first, more generally around some of the front counters?
Yes, so there is a working police station, but it doesn't have a front counter, and I think that's what the question is referring to. The issue of front counters is one which has been very close to my heart. I've had a priority which is about making the police more visible, connected and engaged. One of the issues that we have is that people want to see the police, and they're actually communicating with the police in lots and lots of different ways. People will know that I have piloted front counters in parts of Dorset, but the fundamental issue is that these aren't being used. So to give you an example, we piloted a front office in Verwood in the police station, and nobody came. And so what we then did was something called a community contact point in outside Morrison's, a supermarket. And guess what? There was a lot more interaction with the police. So over the last 2 years, there has been, I think it's over 72 community contact points. You maybe have an updated figure, Mark, but those have happened across Dorset. And that's the issue. It is actually to make certain that the interaction and the communication is the best possible and for the greatest number of people. An actual front office, there are only 4 things that you used to need a front office for, and those are being dealt with in different ways. For example, you used to be able to take your firearms back to a police station. Now the firearms officers will come to you to collect it. If you were in custody or you needed a report to a police station, well, obviously where there are those, then we have those front offices. If you needed to show your driving license, but you can now deal with that online. So as you can see, the things which you needed a front office for are now dealt with in different ways. And the community contact points, we're getting more and more people using those and actually getting a better result. There are other things we're looking at, which is to far-reaching places in Dorset where, brilliant, Jed. There's 146 community contact points which have occurred in the county area alone since 1st of January to the 30th of April. So that's really good news. We are looking at mobile front offices or community contact points, if I put it that way, as well. And we'll see where we get to with that. Mark, I don't know if you want to say anything about timescales.
Yeah, so timescales for so obviously I'll bring Jed in a second, but the wider community contacts, they're rolling, and you can see them on the website. And then obviously in terms of trying to our mobile capability, we've got potentially 2 vehicles we're looking at that can get out to some more rural areas at fixed times, and I'm hoping they'll be out in sort of June, July time. And obviously we'll do some launches around that and engage with the public to let you know what's happening. But Jed, around Dorchester, is there anything particular that you just want to mention around some of the engagement work you're doing?
Yes, boss, no probs. Well, I'm currently sat in Dorchester Police Station at the moment. We've got a patrol teams based out of Dorchester, neighbourhood policing teams based out of Dorchester, a missing support team here, and we've also got specialist traffic units, serious collision investigation teams, as well as some volunteers. So we've got a fully staffed MPT, neighbourhood policing team at Dorchester, with inspector, sergeant, 3 PCs and 4 PCSOs. And yeah, the commissioner commented about the amount of community contact points or engagement events that we're having, which are all publicised on the website. We also do joint targeted patrols with our colleagues from Dorset Council, targeted youth workers in response to ASB and things like that. So we've done 146 public engagement events since the 1st of Jan, but we've also done 51 non-public engagement events for focusing on seldom heard groups as well. So it's very much a well-policed town in Dorchester, and some of the work we're doing at the moment, we've really achieved some great results with some vehicle crime, and shoplifting is a focus as well back in the town centre at the moment, with some real high-vis targeted patrols by the PCs, and we've had some really good feedback from the bid and other business owners over the last few weeks. So I would say that policing in Dorset is quite positive at the moment.
Great, thanks, Jed. And I think the message there is that just because there's no front counter open in some of our stations, there are police officers working there, responding or working for neighbourhoods or other teams as well. Let's move to the next question, if we can. So, my apologies. I'm not sure. I think it's Oliviera from Joanne. The next question. Apologies if I've got your name wrong there. But in St Michael's Road, almost every day or night, we have groups of people screaming, smoking crack, and antisocial behaviour. Why don't we have more patrols, walking patrols in this area? It's outrageous what we see in this street. So I'm assuming it's St Michael's Road in Bournemouth, Heather.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, certainly. So St Michael's is an area that forms part of our both Operation Track. So for everybody out here, that is an area that's designated as a hotspot area for visible patrols. It also forms part of our Clear Hole Build, which is a Home Office initiative where we very much focus on areas that are having a disproportionately higher level of antisocial behaviour or violence. Where we work collectively with our partners in the local authority to understand the complexities of those particular crime problems, to have an enforcement approach by arresting and dealing with some of those individuals, and then the local authority of how they can work with the community to build that area back up so it is a more cohesive, acceptable area for those who live in there and they don't have to suffer those daily crimes. So yes, we do have officers in that area. We are working with our local authority partners to try and put some closure orders on some particular premises within that area. We have had that activity in place for the past year, where we have had many arrests of individuals, and the area is patrolled by officers regularly. It is also patrolled by those in plain clothes, because as you can well imagine, sometimes we have far more success catching people when they're actually undertaking some criminal activity when they don't necessarily know we're there. So there's very much a lot of work. I very much appreciate it can feel like nothing necessarily is happening, because some of these things do take time to convict people. It takes time to get closure orders through the court, and it takes time for the local authority to really try and regenerate an area. But it is very much part of our patrols on a daily basis. So please bear with us. We are very focused on that area, and we are doing as much as we possibly can with the resources we have, as is the local authority.
And Heather, what would you want the public to do in terms of things like getting information about closure, so you can support our closure order on premises? What would your advice be? Yeah,
so information intelligence is really important. As you know, the police can't be there everywhere. We can't see everything as much as those who live there. You are able to report your neighbourhood concerns on our single online home. So go via our Dorset Police website. You can report information and intelligence. So as well, you can also tell any of our officers that if you see them of what's happening, the more information we use, you can also report that into the local authority through the antisocial behaviour teams within the local authority as well, because they have an awful lot of powers that an awful lot that we don't within policing, for example. So please don't feel that you're not being listened to, because you really are, because actually a lot of that information really holds a lot of weight when we put that in front of the court, in front of the magistrates, when they're making decisions about closing particular premises.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. And I think what's really important is that often we see communities got WhatsApp groups running, and people are talking about it, but the police aren't on those WhatsApp groups. So, if you don't think somebody else is going to report it to us, get online, tell us. The more information we have, more bits of the jigsaw, we can do some work with that, and make sure we do everything we can to make sure we make our communities feel safer than clearly you do at present. Next question, please. Okay, Yvonne Barnicoat. So the number of young adults riding electric scooters in Weymouth is increasing. This includes bikes with fat tyres and twisting or handlebars on bikes that can do over 30 miles an hour. It's common now for these to be ridden on pavements and very common on the Rodwell Trail. this needs clamping down on, please. So, Jed, if I can come to you first from a more local perspective on some of these issues.
No problem. Yeah, well, it is an offence. You do need to have insurance with electric scooters and the higher speeded bikes as well. And we do seize them. We will look to seize them every time that we can when it's proportionate. Proportionate is probably the key word there, because an e-scooter going in the opposite direction of a police car would not always warrant the police car to respond on blue lights to affect a seizure of an e-scooter. I think the bigger problem comes with the culture and the rollout of these being more apparent and having a longer term plan through the government potentially to deal with it. So locally, as you've asked, we do seize them when we can. We do look to take them off the streets. They do present a danger and a problem, but we have to be proportionate.
Great, thanks, Jed. Commissioner, is there anything you want to add about some of the wider issues around this?
No, only that I've campaigned in the past and I continue to do it. And I know that Dorset Police also campaign, both with the Beryl bikes and Beryl e-scooters in Bournemouth, but also about the private e-scooters. Look, the private e-scooters are illegal. You're not allowed to use them on the roads. You're not allowed to use them on pavement. They are powered vehicles. And to my mind, you need everything that you would have with a moped or a motorbike. You need insurance, you need training, you need a helmet, and you also, above all else, you need a registration number on the back. And that is what I am suggesting that you have for these legislatively, and I'm hoping the government will move on this at some stage. Because at the moment, it's a bit like when cars first came in. The legislation hasn't caught up with them, and that's what we need. I am heartened by the police and crime bill, which is being worked on through Parliament at the moment, which will allow it and make it easier for the police to seize them if that's what is necessary.
Great, thanks, Commissioner. Heather, you're doing a bit of a trial at the minute, aren't you, in terms of?
Yes. So in my command area at the moment, one of my local inspectors is working on supporting a trial that has been done in only a few other forces across the country, whereby we have what is effectively is a canister, a spray paint. So as the Commissioner said, and Jed has said, it's really actually very difficult to, if you're an officer on foot patrol, so picture the scene, you're officer on foot patrol and one of these bikes whizzes past you, it's very difficult to identify who that person is with no registration. We don't know who they are, and we need to be, and they are causing antisocial behaviour, and the officer simply just can't run after them and keep up with them. So what they do is, if they get that opportunity to get close enough, they can spray both them and the bike, which will show up under UV light. And therefore, if we have information or intelligence and we think we know who that individual is, but we just couldn't simply stop them at the time, we can then go to their home with the UV light, for example, and identify if it's them and the bike. And therefore, we will then seize and the bike, and they'll never get it back. Or likewise, if they're in custody, if they get arrested for another offence, and then we can sort of scan their clothing. And if there's UV lights on there, we will know that they've been part when they've been sprayed, because this spray has got aphids and it's got it's got a number that is, we can tell which canister it came from, and we know which canister was sprayed when. So actually we're trialing that at the moment. We've done that, we've used it a couple of times, and in Poole in particular, over the past 2 months we've seized over 35 bikes and e-scooters within that as well. So we're very much looking at we can do that. The legislation does need to catch up. It does make it a real challenging for policing nationally to be able to deal with these particular matters. So it will hopefully, when the new legislation comes through, it will make things a lot more clearer. And it's really difficult for the public who buy these e-scooters for their children and their bikes, thinking they're a really good idea. Environmentally, they may be, but they're just simply illegal. So
Great.
Hopefully we'll be able to roll that out wider.
Great, thanks, Heather. Some really good advice there, and stay tuned to your social media channels. We'll keep putting the updates out around some of the activity we're doing there, and that sort of smart water spray trial that's going on. Next question, please. So Adrian Savanier, I think it is. Shoplifting is a massive problem in stores. Reporting process is long, and the response is very late. We have to report every incident on its own, even if it's the same repeated offender, without being able to link the incident to the same shoplifter. Is anything in place to ease the process? Heather, do you want to come on that one?
Yes. So shoplifting, we've recognised, as has the government, we've seen a real increase in that, not just in Dorset. The whole country is experiencing an increase in shoplifting. To combat that, we have a real focus, certainly within Dorset and other forces, around our town centres. So we've got a real commitment that we will have a visible policing presence within our town centres across Dorset to be able to focus on retail crime and in particular shoplifting and assaults on shop workers as well. So that goes live now, and so you'll see that in the town centres across Dorset all the way through summer and beyond. Once we identify the areas that are suffering most of that particular crime type, we have had a focus around it. We have a particular operation where we have focused on some of our most prolific offenders. So those you've touched on, those who are repeat offenders, they are often linked to other criminality as well. So actually they're causing a lot of volume crime within our area. So we bring all of those offences together in one, and then we are prosecuting them, and we are seeing some custodial sentences. If you've seen in the media recently, some of those particular people are having custodial offences. We recognise that it is a challenge for shops to report. You can report them all together, and we will link them to a particular offender. If you are having a particular problem with a particular individual, then you are able to make contact with us, and our local neighbourhood teams will visit you to be able to work with you on those particular problems. So please do get in touch with us. But it is something we are focused on. Mr. Sidwick, I know you want to touch on that because you have, as part of your business crime lead.
Yes, Heather, thank you very much indeed. This is something which I care passionately about. It's one of the reasons I became PCC, was I was witness to a shoplifting incident. So what we've done in Dorset is we've started something called the Dorset Safer Business Partnership, where we bring together retail stores. We also bring together business improvement districts, chambers, and we basically have a focus once a quarter where we sit together and we are looking at having a better relationship between Dorset Police and, in effect, the victims, the stores. That means that there is now a business crime strategy, a business crime tactical plan, and operations, which Heather alluded to, like Operation Shopkeeper. That has targeted prolific offenders. That has meant that those prolific offenders, because they have been basically put before the courts for a number of offences, they have actually had custodial sentences in some cases, but better civil orders put in place. So, for example, instead of being asked to not go to a shop, other shops are available, they have in some cases been told to stay out of Dorset. So that is positive. There's also something called Operation Spotter, which is where undercover officers are used in order to address hotspots. But there was also something else in that question, which was the core, which was around reporting. At the moment, we've got analog reporting in a digital age, if I can put it that way. We have partly resolved that by introducing something called the United Kingdom Partnership Against Crime. And what they do is they basically have an information sharing service, but they also help stores actually prepare crime reports. And they have been operating with the Business Crime Reduction Partnership in BCP, and also the Business Crime Reduction Partnership has been put in place across Dorset. So if you're not part of the UK PAC system, then please get in touch with my office and we'll see if we can put you in contact with them. But the other thing I will say is also that Dorset Police are looking at how they can revise the reporting, particularly around shoplifting. And I'm hoping at the next meeting of the Dorset Safer Business Partnership to get an update on the progress towards that. I have been told that by the summer we should have a very clear direction of travel and hopefully an improvement. So we'll see where we are at the moment.
Thanks, Commissioner. One of the things that we're doing as well is we're investing in technology for a digital evidence management system, which will support what the Commissioner is alluding to there. At the moment, we know there are challenges of getting CCTV to us. That will be going online and into the digital cloud. So premises owners will be able to very quickly upload CCTV and it'll come to us direct digitally rather than having to wait for us to collect CDs and USB sticks, etc. And that's being rolled out this year, and we'll communicate further on that about how people can do that. And that's not just for shoplifting, that is for victims of crime as well, ring doorbells, etc. We'll literally be able to send you a link, you'll be able to upload it, and it'll come into our digital evidence management system. So some good progress there. Let's go to the next question, please. So Susan Hammond, I don't think those numbers for Bournemouth are correct. There are stabbings every single day. So obviously, Susan, it's obviously in terms of the figures, and you're referring to. Well, I'll come to Heather to just give a general overview of the figures potentially around knife crime and the activity that's going on. But obviously difficult for us to do that in this forum. We'll be very, very happy that if you're seeing things going on that you don't think are being reported, then please tell us about that. But Heather, do you want to come into some of the figures around the knife crime as much as you can?
Yeah, so I haven't got the actual figures to hand to give you the exact specifics on that, but I can categorically say to you there are not stabbings every single day in Bournemouth. Now, I know Mr. Sidwick, I believe, has got some of the figures, and he will probably touch on that for me on my behalf in a moment. But there are not stabbings every single day in Bournemouth. So I want to give you that reassurance. There's been misreporting in the past, whether that be on social media, etc., that makes it inference that is the case, but it isn't. We do have our incidents of violent crime, but actually nationally, when you compare us to other force areas, we are probably one of the areas that is most safe for knife crime across the country. And I'll say Mr. Sidwick will touch upon that. And it's not just reporting into the police as well. If somebody receives such an injury, they generally, more often than not, obviously have to go to hospital. The hospitals will report it to us as well. So it's not simply that we are not being told. We will be told through other avenues if that is the case. So I want to reassure you, please don't believe everything you see on social media. That isn't the case. Violent crime has come down in Bournemouth Town Centre and across Dorset over the years. And in particular in Bournemouth Town Centre, it has come down as well. It's the reporting of it when it does happen can be quite alarming to people, but it's not happening every single day. So Mr. Sidwick, do you want to come in on those figures?
Yeah, I do. We had a situation, I think it was last year, where there was a headline, 300 stabbings in the centre of Bournemouth. Well, I can tell you that the number of knife offences, which is very different to stabbings, for the whole of Dorset has actually reduced. We're running at about 306, the latest figures that I've got for the whole of Dorset. But that is knife offences, not stabbings. I think when that headline was put in place, we did challenge it. And in actual fact, the numbers, Heather, if you recall, there had been 4 in a year. So yeah. there is a lot of smoke and mirrors about this. I know that we are one of the safest places. If you rank us for number of knife offences, we're one of the safest places in the country. But here's the kicker: is we still have too many young people carrying knives, and so there is a lot of investment. There is a lot of activity going on. And I was with Dorset Police in schools last week when Operation Sceptre was running, where they were actually doing knife awareness and education. So there's a lot of work to be done to try and convince our young people it isn't a good idea to carry knives. And let's be clear, you are more likely to get hurt yourself if you carry a knife. But from the point of view of safety, we were one of the safest places in the country. And those numbers, I think, is probably a harking back to that misreporting last year.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Heather. Let's go to the next question. So Carla Gamble, would you say that we do not have the funding for enough police currently? I respect that you do 100%. However, You say the crime rate has gone down. I find that hard to believe, as you're all so overwhelmed by the amount of crime, not having enough time to focus on petty crimes such as robbery, car theft, etc. Commissioner, is this one that I can come to you on?
Certainly, I will certainly do a bit about it. I mean, the piece about funding, I think it's fair to say that I think we are unfairly funded in Dorset. I have been very public about this. It is beyond the pale that we are the second worst funded force in the country when it comes to what's called the National Police Grant Funds. They are driven by something called the National Funding Formula. That was set up in 2013 primarily to service metropolitan areas. So, for example, it has as one of its factors the density of pubs. That's great if you're in the middle of Manchester. It's great if you're in the middle of London. But if you're on the road between Sherborne and Dorchester, there's probably about 5 pubs. What it doesn't take into account is 2 issues which we have here, which is sparsity, i.e. the fact we are a rural county largely, from the point of view of geography, and also something which is fundamentally obvious but doesn't get any funding is the fact that we have something like 25 million day visitors in the summer. So we don't get any money for seasonality. Now, I am trying to get this changed because this is unfair. It's unfair for another reason, that the good people of Dorset pay more for their police force as a percentage than virtually any other place. I think it's probably about 3 ahead of us. So you pay 52% towards Dorset Police. The average is 35% across the country, and in some places it's as low as 20%. So I have written to the Home Secretary. I'm waiting to have an answer back. And I've made the point that this is unfair and can't go on. The difficult thing is, despite this, Dorset Police have with this police and crime plan, they've reduced crime by 7%. They've reduced antisocial behaviour by over 30%. They reduced burglary by over 30%. There is more to do. And the one that you talked about, theft, is the hardest one to address. But we will continue to develop plans in order to do that. And I know that the force is looking at that at the moment. So I'm going to keep battering away to get fair funding. And Dorset Police will keep performing their way they are, which has taken us from 10th safest to 8th safest. But I'm not going to take the argument that we don't need it because we're too safe, because quite frankly, I want the money fairly into Dorset in order to go forward.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I think just to add to that, so first off, we get inspected around our crime recording integrity to make sure when the public are recording crime, we're recording it with integrity and it's accurate. We have got really good results from our inspection on that. So independent inspection through the His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. So we're good at that. Some great work there. I think the other aspect of things is that we have got the resources we've got to deliver the threat, harm, risk and demand that we've got. Yes, we need more resources. More resources would help us with our timeliness of investigations of what we do, because we want to answer the phones much quicker. We want to get to our incidents quicker. We want to investigate well and investigate, proportionately, but as many investigations as we can. And we want to put the baddies in prison and protect the public. And our officers and staff come to work every day doing the best they can possibly do. And actually, often their frustration is actually the demands there. They want to do more and more to help the public, and they come every day to deliver the best service they can. So I think whilst crime's reducing, that's testament to some of our prevention, our targeting, some of those organised crime groups, those recidivists, repeat offenders. But I don't think we'll be sat here saying to you that everything's hunky-dory. We know that we have got demands and we need more resource to be able to deliver against those demands. But we do as well as we can, and we're constantly thriving to do better with the resource and the funding that we've got. So next question, please. So Chris Guy, what do the police actually do down the seafront? I gave my job up as I had kids threatening to stab me and beat me up, etc. You ring the police and nothing happens, even when it's on CCTV. Are police scared of kids? Jed, can I just come to you first on that one? I'm not sure if that's aimed at BCP or county, but I think it's relevant for both sides.
Yeah, no problem. Well, over the last few years, we've had a operation called 100 Days of Summer. So in Dorset, we get huge demand through the summer period, which was seen as in COVID with holidays on the beach, and that's sort of remained a little bit. We get we've had this from Easter period, and it runs through till September. And 100 Days of Summer is focusing on our hotspot areas on the seafronts, Weymouth being one in county, but we also look at Lyme Regis, Lulworth, Durdledore, Studland and Swanage as the main areas that get that demand. And we have dedicated officers. We had officers there today on 100 Days. We've got them there tomorrow, and they focus on antisocial behaviour, high visibility patrols, and they look to take positive action where they come across any crimes or antisocial behaviour, and they're dedicated for those patrols as well. And we've seen a number of arrests, stop searches, dispersals as a result of that. And I know that, I don't know the exact figures, but I think crime and ASB in those hotspot areas has significantly reduced as a result of 100 Days. That's now moving into OpTrack, which we've started. I think we're ahead of the game in relation to the neighbourhood policing guarantee, which Marm Dixie can probably give a bit more detail on. In Dorchester specifically, where we've got an OpTrack location, we've got 3 PCs who are doing 2 days a week dedicated foot patrols at the very least, and they're making a massive impact in arresting shoplifters, reassuring the public. And we've had that feedback that I mentioned earlier from the bid, and that's going on in 2 locations in Weymouth as well, where we're experiencing the problems that the gentleman has alluded to on the seafront. So there's a lot of work, especially through the summer, on the seafronts in county, and I know that goes on in BCP too.
Great, thanks, Jed. And OpTrack is our hotspot policing prioritisation area, isn't it? Heather's already referred to about dedicated hotspot policing that's got an evidence base against it. Heather, can I just come in then about the Bournemouth there, because I know you do a lot with partners there as well.
Yeah, so Bournemouth, so certainly for the past 2 years, we have seen obviously an increase in tourism. And as Jed touched on, since COVID, it really has boomed, and certainly in the BCP area. Bournemouth Beach, we can have up to 250,000 people coming in a day on our beaches. So the influx of tourism is hugely disproportionate, probably, to the funding that we receive as a police force. So we very much recognise that. So we have dedicated operations all last summer and this summer as well, where officers are on foot patrol along the beach every single day, particularly through the summer, the children's school holidays, when we see obviously the real volume of people attending. But that operation is already live, so officers are already patrolling those particular areas. We have had some incidents of crimes that have occurred, and officers have been at the scene immediately and have therefore been able to arrest and deal with anything that's happened and be able to prosecute. So that is, we do that in the day, and then that forms into our nighttime source of patrol plans as well. So it's not just in the daytime, the visibility that moves into early evening, and then later into the nighttime economy, where again we have dedicated foot patrols through the lower gardens and in particular down at Bournemouth Pier. We work really closely with our community safety partnerships, so community safety accreditation officers, or CSAS, as you will see them in Bournemouth Town Centre, work for the local authority. That is very much part of their patrols. They are down there as well. We've worked closely with the RNLI, so they've received additional training to recognise and identify not just antisocial behaviour, but any potential sexual assault behaviour or anything like that. And they are all very much trained in that, as well as are all the town centre rangers as well. So it is a huge joined up approach to Bournemouth Town Centre in the summer, and with the resources that we have, it is something that we absolutely do patrol all the way through the summer.
Great. Thanks, Heather. And Chris, you in particular mentioned children and antisocial behaviour and other police soft around it. We don't want to criminalise children if there's low-level ASB. We work with our partners to make sure we try and divert. So one of my roles and responsibilities is around child safeguarding as well, with partnership. Heather's with the community safety partnership. But I think, I know we stop a lot of children, and we even use stop search powers on children. And because I scrutinise the data through our use of police powers scrutiny board that I chair, so we are being robust. We will be really clear. We will make sure we challenge parents on those kids that are causing problems. There's things like consequence schemes, working with the safer school teams, working with our youth offending teams as well. And I know Heather and Jed both target those young adults, those youths that are quite criminally active and are committing offences, and we'll put those through the criminal justice system, and our officers will be really robust with them. So I appreciate sometimes that not feel like it, but there are good processes in place where we make sure we deal with that and respond to those incidents. Next question, please. So Adam Dodson, local police are not being supported in rural areas. Our local PC and Sturmist unit is being pulled all over the place. We were promised a PC and a PCSO. Why, Mr. Sidwick, is this not in place? There had been talk of losing stations, which would be devastating, especially how it has proved vital in recent events. The statistics need looking at, as many crimes are not reported correctly. Having a PC on foot is vital. So there's quite a lot in that. So I think first, obviously, from a rural crime perspective, Commissioner, do you want me to just come to you about anything you want to add around that rural crime piece, and then Jed, I'll come to you about some of the activity operationally.
Well, first of all, you're right. There were a number of things in that. So do you mind just putting it up again? That question, and then I'll cover off all the different pieces in order, if that's okay. Let's start at the beginning, which is the issue of we were promised a PC and a PCSO. Why, Mr. Sidwick, is this not in place? Well, that's an operational decision for the force. That's the first thing I'll say. But if that sounds like ducking it, let me now put some context around it. So why that specific situation has happened, I can't speak to. What I will say is that because of the issue around funding over the last 2 years, we have had to take out £15 million from Dorset Police. Now, the wicked accounting rules which we had was with the uplift, we had extra officers, but we were not allowed, when we had to make those funding decisions and find that money, we were not allowed to change our workforce mix, so we couldn't tweak officers. So that meant that had to fall on the staff, and that was 78 staff who we had to offer voluntary redundancy through the Mars scheme to. PCSOs are staff, so I can't talk about whether that is one of those situations. What I do know now is that with the neighbourhood policing guarantee, with the bit of extra money, even though we are the lowest funded force in the country to get that, with a little bit of that extra money, we are now putting in place other PCSOs. So I can't talk about the specifics, but I've given you a bit of a context about why that could be, and also a bit of reassurance that we are looking at how Dorset Police can put back some of those staff roles that they lost, which would free up frontline officers doing those roles to come back out. There's been talk of losing Sturmist and Newton Station. Again, I can't talk to that, but I am not aware of any plans in order to change what Sturmist and Newton Station does. Dorchester Police Station, as we heard earlier, is very well used and has people in it. I suspect that Sturmist and Newton Station is the same. Jed, if you can comment on that, that would be brilliant. The statistics need looking at, as many crimes are not reported correctly. I am absolutely sure that's the case. We want everybody to report everything. The surest way for things not to happen is not to report crime. And this is something I'm passionate about, particularly in our rural areas. We have a very good rural policing team. We have very good neighbourhood policing teams. They absolutely love catching baddies, but they need the intelligence, and also the intelligence drives resources which can be put forward to it. Whether the PC is on foot or not is not something I would comment on, because that's very much operational policing. So I hope that helps with that.
Thanks, Commissioner. Jed, do you want to just come in around Stern Newton, neighbourhood team, etc.? around that, and I can help cover off some other bits in a second.
Yeah, no problem. So we've got a PC based at Sturmiston Newton, Ed Lewis, the long-term serving PCSO that was there, retired about a year ago, and there are plans in place. There are 2 PCSOs coming to North and East Dorset, so I know there are plans in place for that, for one of those 2 to go to North Dorset, potentially Stur Newton. I think the key thing for us is not to lose a state where we can hold on to it, and we've still got Shaftesbury, Gillingham, Blandford, and Stur Newton in North Dorset. All of those stations have got a neighbourhood policing team footprint. They've got a sergeant. They've also got rural crime team based in Blandford. A few years ago, we would have borders, we would have areas, and we'd police our own borders. But now the county and the whole force, we're borderless, really. We will meet the demands daily, but also support our threats and priorities from a neighbourhood policing team point of view. So that Sturmiston Newton PC may be pulled into Weymouth to support a high-risk incident that's occurring there on a day or 2 days. But in return, Sturmiston Newton or North Dorset will be afforded huge resources to manage or deal with a large-scale incident there. And we saw that last week with our high-risk missing person that's gone out in the media the last few days. So we've got to be flexible, and we are. I mentioned about Dorchester and targeted activity at the start with neighbourhood policing. Bridport, for instance, has done 20 drug warrants in the last 12 months. Some of those staff have come from Weymouth, East Dorset, the rural crime team, North Dorset. I know Ed Lewis has been on a load of those warrants. But in turn, we've put staff from the wider county into North Dorset as well to support up there. So I think with the neighbourhood policing guarantee as well, we can then start to do as we've done there with having a bit more high-vis presence in our towns, responding to the community concerns. And I think that will probably manifest itself when we know a bit more about the guarantee and how it will work with local policing. But just to reassure, we have got a footprint in Stur, Gillingham, Shaftesbury, Blandford, Sherborne, and we will respond accordingly, and it won't get left alone. It doesn't. I've hold Stur close to my heart as well, having worked there for quite a few years.
Great, thanks, Jed. So with the neighbourhood guarantee, the Commissioner's just said there, and there's lots of activity going on, and Heather's leading on a lot of that detail around it. But what we're doing now is, because of austerity, because of the money we've had to save, we have had to deploy some officers into roles that perhaps we wouldn't want officers. So some of that is in our control room, some of it is in our custody centres, and some of that is how we can use other skilled people to release officers from those areas. So we're currently recruiting, we're still recruiting police officers. We've got an intake in now, we've got intake coming in August time. We're looking to try and, that's a consistent recruitment to support from the neighbourhood pledge to put more officers into neighbourhoods. We're also recruiting police staff investigators, police staff for the control room, now using the neighbourhood pledge so we can get as many officers back out onto the neighbourhoods as possible, and that's part of the pledge. Lots of planning going on around that. Heather's doing a huge amount of work around it. We're not going to go into detail here on it, but to give you reassurance, as a result of the pledge, there's significant investment in neighbourhoods, and that's starting at pace. So, and a big area of focus is the county as well as BCP. We're doing a lot of work around community harm and shoplifting, robbery, etc., and where we need to deploy those assets. So it's very much on our agenda. We'll go to the next question, please. Craig Scott, why don't you carry out more proactive policing instead of on the reactive policing? More focus on crime prevention is needed, and he's not talking about traffic offences. Heather, do you want to talk about some of your proactive work?
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Craig. I think preventative policing is something that we really want to do a lot more of. We recognise the benefits to our communities. We always say, successful policing is the absence of crime, isn't it really? Because it just simply doesn't happen. So over the past year, we touched on this Operation Track, which is our hotspot policing initiative. So that is very much a preventative focus across the force. That has seen, on average, between 400 and 500 hours of visible foot patrol every month in those hotspot areas across the force. And within that, the activity that they undertook, so simply by being seen by the communities who knew that they were going to be in those particular areas, the engagement with our communities there, actively stop searching people, arresting where offences were then found to have been committed. We have seen a reduction in those hotspot areas, 60% reduction in antisocial behaviour and 67% reduction in serious violence. So yes, it does work. Having a visible policing presence does work. We would never disagree with the public on that. And with our neighbourhood policing guarantee, as we've talked about, with some of the extra funding that the government are giving towards police forces, is very much on this actual issue. So yes, we will see an increase in neighbourhood officers within our neighbourhoods, focusing again in our most highest crime areas or the highest harm areas, so we can really have a proactive approach, working with our local authorities as well, to really understand the root cause of some of this criminality. So we need to understand what the health implications are around some of this, what the social deprivation issues are. We would like to be working with younger children and families so we can prevent some of those younger children becoming offenders in the future. So that is the type of work that we are really trying to get into jointly with our partners, having a real focus around education and health as well. So actually, it's a long-term proactive approach that maybe in 5-10 years, we will hope to see crime come down even more because we're preventing the offenders of the future. So it is something that we are focusing on, and hopefully with our influx of neighbourhood officers, we will have more of that approach. But again, our officers are patrolling across the force every single day as well. So every officer, whether that be our local response officers, our firearms officers, our traffic officers, dogs, they all patrol across the force and take a preventative approach. And I know you didn't want to talk about traffic offences, but they are visible on our roads, they are visible in our communities, and they will be stopping vehicles for not just traffic offences, but to understand if they are in the area to commit any time crimes like theft, burglaries, etc. So we deal with proactivity that way. We'd love to do more. We'd love to have more officers to do more, but to reassure you, I agree with you, and that we very much focus on proactive work where we can.
Thanks, Heather. Commissioner, do you want to come in on this as well?
Yeah, this is obviously one of the areas that I try and invest in is crime prevention. We've got a number of things that we're doing. We're trying, well, let's be honest, we've changed the way that drugs are talked about in Dorset. We have now, I think it's 4 or 5 interventions going into schools which weren't there before. We're doing the same thing. I'm very supportive of what's happening with the education around knives. I've supported Dorset Police, for example, with things like the knife arches, and I've also made certain that patrol cars have a knife wand in each one. So there's all this sort of other things which are going on. Antisocial behaviour, which I know the people of Dorset said to me was their top priority in the places where they lived. It was the thing that they were most concerned about. We have had for 4 years now a Operation Relentless Community Fund, which my office administers, which means that local areas can come to me and ask for money in order to address a micro locality issue with antisocial behaviour. So to give you an example, a youth club had a problem. They put CCTV on top of their building, and they saw a reduction in ASB around it by 80%. That's one small example. Another one is we blocked up alcoves on disused toilets in Bournemouth, where drug dealers were using the alcoves, and obviously they can't use them anymore. They've gone elsewhere, and the local residents are very happy. So those are specific examples of localities which have had grants from this fund. We've just closed the fund again, and I'll be reviewing the suggestions from my team as to who gets the money this year, and I am certain that we will be increasing the number that we have helped. And this isn't geographically biased, it is across the whole of Dorset. If you have a problem with antisocial behaviour, then look out for the Operation Relentless Fund. It will be back again next year.
Great, thanks, Commissioner. But Jed, do you want to just comment a bit more about the county and some of the stuff that's going on there to tackle these issues?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of things in relation to prevention. Is one of the key things is planning. If we get things right and we can anticipate demand, then we're not just there to deal with that demand, but we actually prevent it in the first place. So an example would be the step up in demand from the Easter period, where we get an increase in unauthorised encampments or unlicensed music events or raves. And that planning starts the year before, the autumn the year before, so we can get staff in the right place. So we had police support units, or commonly known as riot squads, available during the Easter bank holiday weekends in anticipation for that. But they're not just sat there awaiting for a rave, they're dealing with daily demand as well, which has increased. Through the summer periods, we risk assess the weekends where we can see we're going to be potentially busy and have events going on, like the Swanage Carnival Regatta, the Rugby Sevens and things like that. So we put extra staff on for that as well. So we don't get caught short, and we have the available resources to do those things. And that enables us to prevent crime and antisocial behaviour.
Thanks, Jed. And I think what's really important, you mentioned Rugby Sevens and events like that, which are private events, just to give you reassurance to the public. We, through special sort of policing services, we charge events for the policing. So it's, there's extra money coming in that then supports that. So that's so we can maintain business as usual policing. And I think importantly, you might not see it, but every day I see examples of proactive work where our officers are stopping cars, stopping cars for drugs and money and criminality. And we also see, we see a lot of our killed and serious injured cases that involve our traffic officers and wider teams deal with, that involve sort of misuse of drugs as well, and of course alcohol in those as well. But that hard edge prevention, I know I'm like a stuck record. If you can make sure you give us your intelligence, because let's face it, if you've got somebody on your street that's drug dealing or activity going on, or you don't feel safe in your home, we need to know about it so we can do hard edge prevention. If people are drug dealing and creating those problems, we need to be going through the door with a warrant and making sure that we bring people to justice. That relies on community intelligence, you working with us so we can do that. So please, I know I'm a stuck record, Crime Stoppers online for Dorset Police, tell us about these issues so that we can make sure we put all the jigsaw pieces together and do everything we can to make sure that Dorset is safe and feels safe. We normally go on for about an hour. We're going to take a few more questions. We're going to run on a little bit because we've got quite a lot of questions. So if we go to the next question, please. So Tori Lou, we've seen the knife arch being displayed on social media, but when are people going to be made to walk through them? For example, at train stations, pool bus station, and if someone has a knife, they're unlikely to walk through it voluntarily. Heather, is this something you can cover off?
Yes, so we do use knife arches where appropriate, and we have used them, for example, at train stations. That falls under the remit of British Transport Police. So it is their responsibility to use them there, but we do work in partnership with them to use the knife arch there. We've used it in Bournemouth Town Centre, we've used it in Nighttime Economy, we've used it at Poole recently as well, and I'm sure, Jed, we've used it over in County in some particular instances as well. It is a tactic we use to identify potential people who are carrying a knife, because you're right, if you're carrying one, you don't want to go through that knife arch for obvious reasons. There is no law for us to force people to go through a knife arch. But what it does indicate to us, for those who are actively avoiding that knife arch, it gives us an opportunity as the police to go and speak to that individual to identify whether we think there is a possibility they may be carrying an illegal weapon. So therefore we have to have good grounds to search somebody, reasonable grounds. Simply them avoiding a knife arch is not enough grounds. We'd have to have more than that. But by speaking to that individual, ascertaining what their intentions are, may well give us those grounds to be able to search them further to identify if they're carrying a weapon. So yes, we do very much focus on those who don't go through the knife arch, but we have no power to force people to go through one.
Great, thanks, Heather. Let's go to the next question, try and get some more in. Steph Emmett, what about motorbike thefts? This area is crazy at the moment. I'm not sure which area that's alluding to. But look, probably, again, I'm probably going to you, Heather, because I think some of the ongoing work with the local policing teams, etc., around some of our vehicle crime.
Yeah, so vehicle crime has gone up, and it's gone up nationally as well, in particular. So motorbike thefts and vans are nationally and locally for us where we have seen that increase in crime. We are working closely with vehicle producers, because it's something that can be designed out. So if you remember years ago with catalytic converters, for example, other those sorts of things, we saw a real rise in theft there. We need to work with the producers of these particular vehicles designed to design out that crime, to make it therefore impossible to steal those particular bikes. We do recognise that there is an increase in motorbike thefts, so we have a force lead who reviews our crimes across the force weekly to understand where we have particular hotspots, where we have any suspects that we are known that are linked to that. And now we have a dedicated team, so our neighbourhood crime teams, and through the neighbourhood teams, particularly in county as well, where we will focus on that information intelligence, and we will try to bring all together the offences that we think particular individuals are committing, with a view to take them to court and put them in prison, hopefully, if we can, if the evidence is there. My plea to you as the community is, often these bikes get stolen, and sometimes you will, again, talk about it within your WhatsApp groups around these things, and we in the police don't necessarily get to hear about it, or you identify where it is and you'll go and collect it. And therefore, again, there's no opportunity for us within policing to identify if there's any sort of forensic opportunities there for us. So if it is stolen, or you've got any information that you think somebody is responsible for those, please do tell us about it. The more information we get, the community, you know who some of these people are within your areas, do tell us. We can do an awful lot of work covertly as well to see if we can identify who those individuals are.
Thanks, Heather. I'm going to move us on to try and get another question in around it. Next question, if we can. Alistair Keddy, we really need to put pressure on the Home Office to review the national funding formula for policing. This would have a dramatic effect on local funding. The best way to do this is to write to your MP and ask them to support the PCC in getting this changed. David, do you want to comment on that one?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful to Mr. Keddy. Look, since the, for want of a better word, since the regime change last July with a new government, I have been working with the new MPs and indeed those who retain their seats, and I have given them all the information, all the bullets to fire, and I've asked them to support me with this funding formula, and I've also asked them possibly to do a collective endeavour with me, and we'll all write jointly. So I am absolutely on the same page as Mr. Keddy. I'm going to keep fighting for what the people of Dorset rightly need for their policing, and I ask all the MPs to join me. So that's the message, really. We need to get this sorted.
Great, thanks, Commissioner, and we're grateful from obviously from the policing perspective for all you're doing in terms of trying to get us more funding so we can deliver better policing across the county. Let's just take another question before we round up for the evening, or observation. Delay in the system. So Jessica Rooks, because they do not protect women and girls. So I think what we have seen here in some of the comments is the comments around violence and violence against women and girls around things. And I'll just come to Heather first, just from BCP, and then Jed, just from a county perspective, just talk about some of the operational things, and then I can cover off a few bits as well around all the work we're doing around this, which is really, really important and a key priority for us in the force. Heather.
Yeah, I just want to touch on, I've seen some of the comments around from some people talking about something that was on social media about 2 women being kidnapped in a van last year, and police did nothing about it. Can I just say to everyone, this was a scam? This was not true. I remember it was at the time. Those incidents did not happen. It was a scam that was put out on social media to put fear into people. So I'll make that clear now that did not occur. Safety of women and girls is very much a priority for Dorset Police. I've touched on some of the foot patrols and the activity that we do, working with our local authority partners. We take all reports of sexual violence, sexual touching extremely seriously. We have seen some of those reports in our local areas, whether that be within Bournemouth Town Centre, whether that be in Weymouth Beach. We will identify and arrest those perpetrators and bring them to justice. It is really, really important that our women and girls feel safe. We undertake some operations called Operation Vigilance. So this is where we have officers in plain clothes out in our nighttime economy, within our town centres, so we can really identify potential people who are looking to cause harm towards women. We can identify them at an early stage, do some intervention, identify, either arrest or divert or remove them from the area. We are part of a national programme called Operation Soteria, which is a real focus around rape and sexual violence, which Mr. Callaghan has got more detail on, so I'm sure he can touch upon that as well, if that's something you want to come in on, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of things there that Heather's covered off, but I think in terms of the wider work we do. So first off, as a force, protecting vulnerable people is a key priority for us. And that's not just in safeguarding, but that's also in targeting offenders around all sorts of offences. Rape, harassment, stalking are absolutely key priorities for us. We're also doing initiatives using our special constabulary around female runners. We know that female runners, when they're out and about, feel often quite intimidated. So we're looking at operations around making sure we understand what the issues are and how we can target those behaviours that are absolutely shouldn't be happening against females. Heather's already mentioned the things around some of the more proactive targeting that we're doing, that's in uniform and in plain clothes. We're also doing lots of work around upskilling all our detective investigators. All will be sexual offence trained, so we have quite, we're recruiting lots of new officers and detectives. They all get extra training. All our frontline officers are getting additional training as well, and that's part of the Soteria that works. That's a national framework of which comes out of the murder of Sarah Everard and all the work around violence against women and girls nationally. We're adopting all that and delivering significant work around it. And I know local MPs have done walk-arounds towns to make sure people are feeling safe as well. If you don't feel safe in your community as a female, and you think there's areas that of concerns around violence against women and girls, we definitely want to hear about it. Through the local authority website, you can report, which goes to the community safety department, areas you don't feel safe, whether you need lighting or whatever it may be. But please be reassured, it's an absolute priority. I've got a daughter. Other people on this call have got children and daughters as well. Just like you, we want people to feel safe when they're out about, and that's absolutely our commitment. So we can obviously, we perhaps might need to do more communication with that, and we've been working with the university locally as well around things. Commissioner, did you want to just add anything further to that?
Only briefly, because I think you and Heather have comprehensively addressed the question. I think the point I'll make is that the issue of violence against women and girls is complex. There's a number of different factors to it. What we've talked about a lot, we've talked about safety on the streets, safety in the places, that is incredibly important, but it's also about safety in people's homes. And something I care passionately about is the issue of, you mentioned stalking, but something else is the issue of domestic abuse, not just actually for women and girls, but also generally, but particularly women and girls, because that is the bulk of where the situation lies. And I think what I'm very clear about is we have to understand the complexity of each of these problems, and we've got to put in place solutions for each element of it. So that solution might be, how do we help somebody who is in a domestic relationship which is toxic? How do we help them get out of that? How do we support them? Those sorts of things which I talk to my office about, and we're trying to make changes to. But also, what are we doing about going ahead of the problem? We talked about prevention earlier. What are we doing about addressing the issue of misogyny in our young people, particularly our young men? What are we doing about the issue of mobile phones, for example, where they see things at a very young age, which actually colours their idea of relationships, their idea of what is a normal relationship, etc. And I think more can be done about that. And I'm campaigning in order to try and get more done by the government with that, because I don't think we go early enough with what we're saying to our young people. When you get a mobile phone at 7, are we really addressing the issues that we need to do, or are we waiting until 13 or 14 when it's far too late? So that's some of the things that prey on my mind, and I'm trying to address, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Commissioner. Heather, I'm just going to come to you for the last comment, and then we'll go to the final comment before we close up for the evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch, because you jogged my memory there, Mr. Sidwick. So as obviously chairs the Community Safety Partnership, we were afforded some funding through the Serious Violence Duty, again from the Home Office. And some of that funding we are looking to put into an education piece, so working with young boys in schools and young ladies as well, to really talk about language. So what is appropriate language, what are appropriate healthy relationships, to touch on what Mr. Sidwick said, some of the things that they see and hear on the internet is quite frankly disgusting, and it's not appropriate, but are they being told that is inappropriate when they're watching that on their mobile phones? So that's very much part of what we're hoping to put some money into our local authority area, certainly in BCP, to be able to have a look and see if we can do some education around language and behaviours and relationships in our younger children, so they go up to have healthy relationships.
Great, thanks, Heather. So we're going to take the last comment for tonight now, before we wrap up, and I'm going to ask the Commissioner in a second just to come in and just do the sort of final words before we close. But a comment here from Ray J. I'd also like to say a massive thank you for all your hard work under extremely difficult and challenging circumstances. Your efforts are always appreciated by the majority of people. Ray, I'm assuming it's a huge thank you for that comment. Our people, our officers and staff, work tirelessly every day trying to do the very best they can, working under often complex, difficult circumstances. We're absolutely aware that our officers can go to many jobs a day, but the contact they have with you as victims or you as witnesses or member of the public is often the first contact that they have, and that's the most memorable contact, and they do their very best under challenging circumstances. So I'm hugely grateful for that comment, and that'll go a long way to our officers and staff in reassurance for them. So thank you. Huge amounts of questions tonight. Commissioner, can I just hand over to yourself, perhaps just to give us a few closing remarks?
Yes, thank you very much indeed. And Ray, I'd like to add my thanks to you, actually, because the appreciation of these people who do this very hard job is very much appreciated. I'm certain they'll be heartened, and I'm certain Mark will pass that on to the rest of the force. We've had 250 comments and questions tonight. We've only been able to scrape the surface and get through what we could get through. And I think I speak for all of us when we say we'd rather do that and give you a comprehensive answer than try and skate through 250 comments and one-liners. What we will do, though, is take those 250 comments and we'll try and get answers back on all of them. They'll probably be able to be clustered into themes, and that's what we'll do, and we'll work on it. Can I give my heartfelt thanks to Mark and Heather and Jed? Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to be here. This issue of being visible and connected with the public is absolutely critical to build trust and confidence in Dorset Police, and we will do more of these. And thank you very much indeed to you for participating, but more importantly, thank you to the people of Dorset. Without you asking those questions, we wouldn't have had a dialogue tonight, and that is ultimately important. We will all keep pushing to make a difference and make Dorset safer. Thank you this evening.